I can assure you that many teachers dip from their own family pocketbook in order to ensure that their classrooms are stocked with supplies. And I also have a friend whose child with autism was unable to receive services they needed for the past 2 years, meaning they drove daily at their own expense to Detroit for service. Where is our service? I have a lot of questions about our system right now, and I know the answers are very complicated. Our primary concern right now is to revamp the funding system.
In 2003, our classrooms were in chaos. We lost 1,500 teachers. We gutted $2 billion out of our school's budget. We closed over 500 public schools. We lost 26 million days due to strike. My legacy as a student here in Sarnia-Lambton is the Harris years. As a high school student, I suffered from work to rule. And for some of you who may not know, but I'm sure everybody in this room does, that meant absolutely no extracurricular activities. We lost days due to strike. And it's not just time in the classroom that's important, it's time that we invest in drama, in the arts, in sports. And where are we today? We have come to a place where Ontario is recognized internationally as having one of the best public education systems in English-speaking countries.
What will you do at Queen's Park to ensure that the needs of special education students are more adequately funded and that school boards aren't forced to take funds for other programs to support special education?
People with special needs are just as smart as the rest of us. They can be as productive members of the society as the rest of us. And I think investment in the education for these people is just as important as everybody else's.
Our party's policy is we need to increase the funding to our education system in all aspects, including the special needs. Whether that requires hiring more teachers to work, more teacher assistants.
The solution that we see is to rebuild the funding model. We're talking about a funding model right now that's based on numbers from 1997. It's simply time to revisit that funding formula.
We have increased funding in all areas of education spending across the board since 2003. We are faced with declining enrollment. So I will agree with my colleague that we need to attack these issues at several different levels. It's important to note that funding has increased by 46% in special education. And we project the budget spending for 2011 and 2012, and we're looking at funding going over $196 million.
What role, if any, do charter or private schools have in the future of Ontario's public education system?
Our party believes that in a fair and equitable public education system that welcomes all students regardless of their beliefs. We support a strong public education system, both English and French, that will provide our future generation with the tools they need to succeed in the 21st century economy. But in the interest of equality and fiscal and administrative efficiency, the Green Party of Ontario will hold a citizens' assembly to study and offer recommendations on the constitutional process and the issues relating to a single public system in Ontario.
Ontario's New Democrats simply do not support public funding of private schools.
I think in this point our record speaks for itself. We've built 500 new schools, 4 right here in Sarnia-Lambton, and these are public infrastructure, and this is where we're going to keep investing our dollars. We don't build one of the best public school systems in the world overnight. We have worked since 2003 to make people stand up and recognize that Ontario has one of the best public systems, and people admire what we've done in education. We're training the future. We're committed to public education.
What will happen to the early learning and care plan if your party forms the next government?
As we all know, one of the cornerstones of our education policy is rolled out full-day kindergarten, which has saved families over $6,000 a year. So we're looking at one of the most significant programs for families and for kids. Now we're looking at childcare spaces. This government has created 80,000 spaces. 22,000 new spaces, the NDP voted against. What we're really talking about here is saving families money. Ontario families are looking to the Liberal government to provide full access education for their children, and full day kindergarten does that.
Classrooms simply did not grow with the class sizes. So there are some issues with it, and I suppose there are growing pains within the program. There's no question about that. I also know that supplies didn't come in to match the growth and the change in the program. Some schools have them, some schools don't. And that's a problem I have. If you're going to roll out the program, you need to be equitable and fair to all the students involved. Now, we would bolster it with measures to protect child care centers from closure. There are child care centers right now threatening to close because they've lost students.
Adult education programs across the province.
One of the things we look at is increasing things such as apprenticeship programs, the co-op programs for students as well.
We can look at apprenticeship and training, in which our government's created 120,000 new apprenticeship spaces. Our Ontario Liberal Party platform sees us creating satellite campuses, dedicating more time to online learning. But if we want to focus on second career and retraining programs for people that are coming into their education at a later life, again, that comes down to funding, and that comes down to making investments, which is what we do. The Ontario Liberal Party makes investments in our people so that we can continue to grow. So in times of deficit, in times of recession, we go into spending to continue to invest to put people back to work. Second career programs, online learning, satellite campuses, these are all a package of services that allow us to retrain any individual at any stage of life.
Good to hear that.
Education is good investment no matter what your age is. In case of adult people, I think that can steer into a readjustment to the changing economies, and it just as important in productivity of those people as it is for younger people.
What role, if any, should public-private partnerships have in the delivery of essential public services such as education, healthcare, and corrections?
We have serious concerns about public-private partnerships for service delivery. Governments can borrow more cheaply than private consortia, keeping project costs down. As well, these types of projects often see public funds being shifted to the private sector. We see that all the time. For high upfront risk premiums and long-term maintenance of privately owned facilities. And this dual management structure, with the bricks and mortar owned by the private sector but run by government or for not-profit organization, often leads to confusion in management and issues with accountability. So, very limited role, if any.
P3 partnerships were an integral part of the long-term infrastructure plan. We're looking at how to make capital investments in services like education and healthcare. Well, the result is 500 new hospitals, 4 here in Sarnia-Lambton. P3 partnerships have allowed infrastructure and capital projects to be on time, under budget, and fully funded and costed. We have invested $1.4 billion. That's $1.4 billion in infrastructure. That's more than the total infrastructure investments that the PCs and the NDP made when they were in government.
Private and public partnerships actually provide us with a great opportunity. If we take the example of from Toronto, the school boards made an agreement with AMP Solar Limited Partnership so that they get their roofs repaired without having to use government money in order to do it. The exchange was that AMP could place photoelectric solar panels on the roofs, and that in turn was placed into the grid. And that provided between 50 and 66 megawatts.
We're creating 3 new campuses, 60,000 new spaces of the 200,000 spaces that we've already created, a 30% upfront tuition grant. That would save $1,600 a year for students attending college. We're talking about 120,000 new apprenticeship spaces, 26 million days lost due to strike in the previous government, 0 since 2003. So obviously we're doing something right. And I'd like to point out that only teachers know what teachers need to do the job that they need to do. And this government respects that. We've strengthened their collective bargaining rights. And again, our record speaks for itself. 0 strike days since 2003.
I ask a question to Mr. White. Having the best educated population is one ingredient. The other one is private wealth creation. And what would your party do to attract private investment to this province, maybe even foreign investment to this province?
Our focus right now is, in a word, protectionism. Our interest is making sure that Ontario resources and Ontario's public money is kept right here in the province to ensure that our businesses grow. We have small business incentives, we have incentives for job creators. We're not that interested in more tax cuts to corporations that shut down and move away. If a corporation wants to subscribe to a program where they can guarantee that we're going to get payback for our investment, we would absolutely be interested in working with them.
The question was regarding the supply list being open to new graduates.
In my view, we have to address the issue of double dipping. We have to address the concerns that we have about retired teachers collecting a pension and remaining on the supply list. My view is if you're going to retire, please retire, enjoy your time, enjoy your pension, contribute in other ways, as we know that a lot of what that is people really just want to stay active and really want to contribute to society. I think that's a fantastic thing, and there are ways to do that. So if you're going to retire, though, my view is we should have retired teachers retire.
A lot of people say to me, well, you're running for MPP, what are you going to do to get me a job? How are you going to make sure there's going to be a spot for me? And I would agree with Mr. White on the issue of double dipping, because a lot of young teachers are very frustrated when they see teachers retiring and coming back into the system. So that's one solution. The other solution is looking at how many teachers we're graduating and putting some onus on the universities to cap the amount of teachers that they're allowing into the program, because it's irresponsible of a university to allow an open policy on enrollment without a guarantee of a job.
Ontario's New Democrats are moving slowly and practically, putting money back in your pocket, reinvesting in Ontario without sacrificing our economy. NDP provincial governments around the country have placed ahead of the Conservatives and far ahead of the Liberals in creating surplus budgets and offering social services with the smallest governments, serving as an example to all how social democracy can work for people and businesses alike. I'm asking you to look past the smear campaigns of other parties, do the research for yourselves, and come to your own conclusions. We need to build an Ontario where our students can be educated and have hope to raise families of their own, with good paying jobs.
Building better Ontario should be non-partisan. We should all have common desire to lead to a better Ontario. And I believe I have that ability to move beyond the party dogma. I have established a public service record. I didn't even run out of time because I couldn't really identify at all. I've been on city council for 5 terms. This is my 6th term. I've served you on Sani Hydroelectric Commission. I have served you on the Circular Region Conservation Authority, which I'm chair of.
What the Green Party is saying is it's time. What we mean is it's time for a change from the usual. Everybody's used to voting the usual for the 3 top parties, but the Green Party offers a change that's for the better. We will invest in education, which is the core, before students become adults and become workers. And we need to invest in our education, we need to invest in jobs. And the Green Party, that's what we're looking to do. I'd be happy to serve as your MPP, and hopefully you vote for me come October 6th. Thank you very much.
The theme of the Ontario Liberal Party platform is Forward Together. And the first challenge that we look at overcoming is building a workforce. And the foundation of that is building our education sector. I don't think I need to go over our strong record in education again, but I will say, yes, we have a strong record, but we have a lot more to do. We want to raise those test scores, we want to bring up our graduation rates, we want to keep bringing down our class sizes, we want to invest in post-secondary education and make sure that everybody has the opportunity to get the education that they deserve.